Hi YouTube, I'm back. Yeah, I've got some things to show you first before I read my journal entries. I had some hoodies printed with this logo on. It's on the front and the back. This is relevant because on the day I'm going to read, I wore this into town and I got some strange reactions. Right, if you didn't see it on the camera, it says gang stalking definition, harassment, unwanted and obsessive attention, electronic torture, surveillance, organised by government agencies. And also got a purple one. And the company I used was my personalised clothing, and that's a UK company, and their address is www.mypersonalisedclothing.com, and they haven't got a price on here. This is just a delivery note. Well, I think it cost about 50 quid for both of them, roughly. So when you go on to their website, the VAT isn't included in the prices that first come up. So the VAT on these was about 8 quid, I think. Anyway, I've got my cat here as well. He's called Ginger. I don't know if you can see him or if he's just out of shot, so we can say hello, Ginger. He's got, he's a bit skinny because he's got a couple of problems. He's got a heart murmur and he's also got kidney disease. So I've just started him on an organic diet. So that's organic chicken and beef. You won't eat the organic salmon. I actually, while I was reading a book called Animal Souls, it said in there that it's actually better to eat fish. I mean, I'm vegetarian, so I don't eat meat, but if you're going to eat meat, it's much better to buy fish anyway from farms that actually farm the fish rather than going out into the sea to catch the fish, because the seas need to be left alone for quite a long time now, so they can regenerate themselves. So I was quite surprised by that, because yeah, I don't know why, I just thought it would be better to have fish naturally from the sea, but actually it's having a very negative effect on the environment. So, okay, so this is episode 3 already, and the entry I'm going to read out is the 22nd of June 2017. It's Thursday. So I'm just going to have a cup of tea. Okay. Last night, before I went to bed, I had a bad attack. I think maybe it is microwaves they're hitting me with. I've had these attacks before on a lesser scale. It's like a hot flush. For a while the carers were trying to convince me I was menopausal, and then it was perimenopausal, but I simply don't believe that our bodies were designed to inflict this much pain and suffering on us. Anyway, I've been experiencing these attacks for many years now, and my mother didn't have her menopause until she was in her 50s, and that was brought on by her cancer treatment. I think it's to do with their plausible deniability protocol. There is a YouTube channel I watch, Truther Girl, and she believes she's perimenopausal. She has also suffered with adrenal fatigue, which I think she now sees as part of the perimenopause. Soon there won't be a single period of a woman's life when she doesn't believe she must be suffering from some syndrome or other. The symptoms this woman describes are very similar to my own. Personally, I think she is a targeted individual, but I've tried telling people this before and they never believe me, usually because they are already being influenced by people they believe are their friends, but who in actuality are probably perps. Sometimes when I'm being attacked, the heat feels as if it is all over me, or sometimes it is just in one place, like the centre of my back. Last night this heat came on stronger than ever. I was sweating and a little afraid for my safety, that they were literally going to cook me alive. Then I heard the controllers laughing and speaking as if to each other, saying, "Steady on, don't go overboard." While they were heating me up, I was also being hit in my lower abdomen with something that felt even hotter, as if I was burning. Just before these symptoms had come on, I'd got a strange sensation in my mouth, in my teeth actually. I thought for a while I might have implants in my teeth, because sometimes they seem to buzz or ache for no reason at all. When I felt myself getting hot, I went into the bathroom, because it's cooler in there, and sometimes the symptoms lessen. I think because the walls are lined with ceramic tiles. I also put some strong magnets over my mouth to see if this would work, and the burning sensation in my abdomen went. If I removed the magnets, it came back. The attack didn't last long, only about 10 minutes. I'm feeling hot now as I write this. I have been for several days now. They seem to have turned the heat up on me during the day as well as night. It used to be I would just get hit for short periods during the day, but at the moment it seems to be fairly constant all the time. When I was younger, I had the opposite problem. I was super sensitive to the cold. I used to huddle in front of the fire to get warm, and then I'd get told off for blocking the warmth from everybody else. All because I was so selfish apparently, and never thought of anyone but myself. It's kind of funny now, thinking of the things I'd be told off for, that these people who were collaborating in my harassment felt superior enough to lecture me on morals. I wonder now, if I've been the victim since I was a child, if they were hitting me with these kind of weapons back then too. I did used to get ill a lot, and when I was ill there was never a doctor called. Jenny came this morning, bang on 10 o'clock. She didn't cook the potatoes again, they were still rock hard. When she said breakfast is done, I thought, that's odd, I didn't hear the potatoes boiling. I think she must leave them on such a low heat the water doesn't come to a boil. I didn't say anything. She came into the lounge and looked at the potatoes on the plate, and then at me, obviously wondering why I hadn't said anything. I carried on tucking in as if I hadn't noticed. She said she would be back this evening, and I pretended to be pleased. I'm a master at making these people think I like them. It amuses me in one sense, just the fact that they participate in this kind of stuff proves they are far more gullible and susceptible to manipulation than I am. My internet data allowance has run out, so I went into town to see if I could buy another dongle and some more data. I wore my gang stalking hoodie that came yesterday. I got some very negative responses and some what looked like sympathetic responses. I felt a bit afraid for some reason of wearing it. Maybe it was just fear of speaking the truth and being real that scared me. I spend so much time pretending just to get through the day. Some of it is conditioning from when we were younger. As a child I was always told children should be seen and not heard, and if we spoke when we had been told not to, we spent however long my mother deemed necessary with our hands over our mouths, often in public, which was humiliating. If something was wrong, telling someone was the last thing to do. My mother wasn't one for sympathy, and she didn't believe in doctors unless you were bleeding to death. In fact, telling my parents something was wrong usually ended up with accusations that I had done something wrong myself to bring it about. So all of this leads us to be fearful of self-expression. What I hadn't realised though, or hadn't factored into the equation, was that when people's actions are brought out into the open, they of course aren't going to be happy about that, and they're going to attack you. First I went into Tesco. I go to Morrison's usually, but Tesco is a treat because they do organic lemons and some other things I can't get in Morrison's. It seemed quieter than usual. There were still lots of people, but the atmosphere felt more subdued. When I got to the fruit and veg section, there was a stereo playing a song. I can't remember who the artist is, but the lyrics go, "Clap along if you feel like happiness is the key, because I'm happy, happy, happy." I don't like the song because while I was living at home with my dad and Grace was going through her bitchy phase, she used to play this song over and over whenever I came into the room. This was because I'd foolishly told her that one of the reasons I'd come home was because I wasn't happy. So I don't think this was a coincidence that they were playing this song. I didn't get as many people staring at me as I usually do, but I did get 3 people though, 1 assistant and 2 customers, who all at different times walked past me and then stopped dead in front of me. Next I went to Vodafone, and I ended up wasting an hour and a half because there was a queue, and then by the time they'd gone through their sales pitch I realised I should have brought my account number and sort code, because I couldn't set up an account with them otherwise, so I had to go home and come back. When I came back there was lots of filling in forms on screen, and then she wanted to do an ID using my bank card. I had to put it into a keypad and enter my PIN number. The computer said I was fine, but then when she entered my sort code and account number, an error message came up. She said it was error message 01, and she couldn't remember what that meant. Thinking about this now, none of what she said was making sense. How likely is it really that a shop assistant would turn away a customer because she doesn't understand an error message on her machine? And how likely is it that the information wouldn't have been available for her to access? Clearly she had been prepped before I'd come back, just by the things she was coming out with. One thing she said was how hot and humid it was today. She said this twice. I remember thinking she didn't look hot and bothered. She was wearing quite a thick cardi over her Vodafone t-shirt. I think she was told to say it as part of their attempt to convince me this heat I'm feeling isn't from the microwave weapons, that it's just a hot and humid day and everyone else is feeling hot just like me. Although actually the day was mostly overcast and a bit windy. She asked me if I'd been at work today. What kind of question is that? I just said I didn't. I just said I hadn't and didn't elaborate. Anyway, she knew the answer to that. I used to get this question a lot every time I saw a doctor. It didn't matter what state I was in, if I was lying on a bed in A&E or bent over in agony pleading for pain relief at the surgery. They would always ask me if I was working, the suggestion being that I should be working, because of course they also knew the answer already. I've even had doctors suggest I would get better if I had a job. I think the controllers do this to try and create a guilt complex in me. But given everything they've done to me, including making me ill and torturing me, why should I feel guilty that I can't work? The strange thing is, as I got up to go, she had this massive smile on her face, and I've no idea why. Maybe she was thinking, didn't I do well? I did exactly as they told me to, and now she's leaving without her dongle. While I was walking through town, on my way to Vodafone the second time, after collecting my bank details, I passed a group of people. It looked like a family group because of the mixed ages, and they were talking about iPads or phones. One girl was talking about software that comes pre-installed on these devices, and was complaining very loudly at some of the stuff she'd found on her device. As I passed, she glared at me, then said very loudly they'd put bloody paint on it as well. The others all chimed in and agreed what an awful piece of software it was. Paint is a handy piece of software and it doesn't take up much memory. It seemed a very small thing to get so angry about. I designed the gang stalking logo on my hoodie using paint. I guess when she saw me that was the only thing that popped into her head, that she could slip into the conversation. In Carphone Warehouse, the next place I went to, the bloke was very friendly and chatty. They didn't do mobile dongles, but he asked me if I'd consider broadband as it was much cheaper, at £18.99 a month, and you had unlimited data. So I said yes. The contract was only for a year. At first I was thinking, wow, someone who isn't brainwashed and is treating me like a normal person. But then he started calling me Vicky. I really hate being called Vicky. But yeah, the carers went through a phase of calling me Vicky, or trying to anyway. Didn't matter how many times I said, please don't call me Vicky, they'd call me Vicky. After taking all my details, which didn't take long, He didn't want to ID me or anything like Vodafone. He told me that there wasn't anything to give me, as it would all be sent via text and email. As I was leaving the shop, the guy's demeanour changed entirely from friendly and chatty to someone who looked positively pissed off, and he virtually shouted, "Goodbye, Vicky," at me. The perps have used this technique on me several times. It used to happen when I went into Wilco's. The assistant would be really friendly, and then just before I went would scowl at me and say something sarcastic or roll her eyes, or sigh as if they were glad to get rid of me. As if to say, "Gotcha, you thought we were getting on. I hate you, really." I think if someone is just horrible from the start, you're more likely to shrug it off and assume that's just the way they are. But if they can persuade you first that they like you, you're going to be more hurt when they switch to being the assholes they really are. Actually, much of what he told me turned out to be a lie. On Saturday, I went to the library to use the internet so I could see what they'd emailed me. The emails I received from Sky told me that it takes a fortnight to set up. At Carphone Warehouse, the guy told me it takes about a week. In fact, Carphone Warehouse was supposed to give me a provisional date, which he didn't. He should also have given me an order number. So when he said he didn't have anything to give me, he was lying, which explains why he kept looking at the other assistant and grinning as he was telling me all this bullshit. After I'd been to Carphone Warehouse, I went to a craft shop to buy some wool for the blanket I'm crocheting. I've been in there before, about a year ago. I showed the lady my wool samples that I wanted to match. She seemed to have a smaller section than she had the last time I went. She kept saying, "I think I'm going to have trouble finding those colours." In the end, I bought 2 balls off her, just so I'd have something to crochet with. It wasn't till I was outside of the shop that I remembered there were 2 other little box rooms she had with wool in, which she hadn't shown me. The place is like a warren. I did have a feeling to look round a corner while I was in there, but something stopped me. The odd thing was, she was kind of smiling at me the whole time, as well. Not in a big fake way, to get my trust like the guy in Carphone Warehouse, more like the girl from Vodafone. Perhaps there are some people who go along with this harassment because they don't want to be the odd ones out. Maybe they secretly admire people who stick their necks out. Who knows though? I would love to know what goes through these people's heads and how they justify doing this stuff. I stopped at Beeching Park on my way home and sat by one of the beech trees next to the oak I sometimes sit by. I was feeling too stressed to try and meditate, so I read a chapter of Animal Souls. I had a nice experience with a squirrel and a magpie. The squirrel came very close, about 5 metres away from me, and sat looking at me for about 5 minutes. After it had gone, a magpie came and landed in the same spot and waddled about in a circle, which was nice. I always leave a gift of seeds or peanuts when I go, and they're always gone the next time I go back. I also did some affirmations to calm myself down and get back into my peaceful place. I did my "what do I think of me" affirmation, as this has the effect of strengthening my boundaries and making me more impervious to what other people say about me. I think the last time I did this affirmation, and I actually asked myself, what do I think of me, I answered the question by saying I loved me. This time I thought about the question, and I got a different answer. I decided I was a fabulous person, strong, brave, and well along on my spiritual path, and also doing a great service to humanity by taking on this life. This response had a much bigger impact on my state of mind than saying I loved myself, which seemed odd at first, but then I decided that I already do love myself. I don't have a problem with self-acceptance and self-love. What I do have a problem with is acknowledging my achievements, my abilities and strengths. I'm quite hard on myself in this respect. This goes back to my childhood again, and my supercritical parents. The only thing I remember my mother acknowledging I could do was draw. I don't remember my father ever acknowledging anything. And like an innocent, I worked very hard at trying to impress them, which of course I never could. Now I look back and realise that most of what they criticised me about was down to my autism, like not fitting in, not having friends, not going out, having no common sense, being a hermit, and when I was even younger, criticising the way I walked, telling me off for dragging my feet. My balance isn't good and I have poor coordination. I also had sensitivities to certain fabrics, and the texture of certain foods. This is all typical in autism. I wonder sometimes if they knew I was autistic, or why they didn't ever try to find out what was wrong with me, and why the schools I went to never noticed or did anything either. But realising now that I've been a target for my entire life, most likely the controllers were instrumental in all of that too, which makes their criticism and treatment of me even more horrible. I've seen my dad do the same thing to Grace, who I'm sure has an attention deficit disorder, though the schools seem to blame most of her problems on my mother's death and gave her art therapy as a solution. But I don't think grief causes ADD. But as I've said before, the controllers tend to also attack the rest of your family too, even if they are collaborating with the harassment against you. Jenny came at 7. I find her a bit odd really. She's very quiet and quite severe. There's nothing soft or nice about her. She came onto my rota about the same time as Lucy. They put new people on my rota periodically to see if I will bond with them, to get someone close to me. Well, it's a waste of time really. I know anyone they send here is going to be a perp. Both Jenny and Lucy seem like strange choices to send to me though. Jenny because she's so cold and distant. The idea of me showing anything personal with her is a laugh. And Lucy because, well, she's 6 foot tall and about 2 feet wide. She towers over me. She usually has stains down her top and her hair is piled in a mess on top of her head. And she doesn't like doing anything. The others will tidy the kitchen up and do any washing up there is. Not Lucy. I get the impression the only things she likes doing are eating and watching telly. Maybe they know I'm not going to make friends with any of these women, but they keep on with it to give their minions at Tamworth Home Care something to do and something to talk about, and to keep them running about and doing as they're told. I still had my new gang-stalking hoodie on when Jenny came. I'm not sure what she thought about it. She behaved as if she didn't even notice it. I didn't get any vibes off her about it at all. But then I was just thinking as I wrote the above, she is very much a closed book. She doesn't give much away about what's going on inside. I guess this is a defence mechanism. When I showed my gang-stalking hoodie to Pauline, she laughed nervously, but then I've spoken to her about gang-stalking, and I've told her I believe that Tamworth Home Care and all the carers who come here are involved. She just keeps repeating she isn't involved and she doesn't know what I'm talking about. I think the perp's technique for persuading Pauline and the others to carry on with this charade is to persuade them that with no proof there will always be an element of doubt in my mind. This is always the perp's default position if you challenge. They will ask you what your evidence you have and try to make you doubt yourself. I suppose if I go a while not speaking about it and being nice to them, they might believe that they've convinced me and I've given up on my conspiracy theories. I haven't spoken to Jenny about gang stalking, and clearly no one has told her I know the carers are involved, because she didn't bat an eyelid at my hoodie, and she doesn't have that much self-control, I'm sure. As she was leaving, she said she didn't know when she would see me next, but she was sure I would. Always keen to double-check their statements, because they lie so often. I said, "You're not on my rota again this week then?" She smiled to herself, and said she wasn't. I think she smiled to herself because she thought this question was an indication that I liked her. Actually, I just want to know who's on my rota, because the rota the office send me is wrong much of the time. It amused me that she thought it meant I liked her. What's to like? I know nothing about this woman. She's as much a stranger to me as when I first clapped eyes on her. She seems to think that simply smiling at me when she comes in, and when she leaves, is enough for someone to form an attachment to someone. Then I realised how people, myself included when I was younger, are not very careful about who they form attachments to, and usually the attachment is to a personality they have created in their own mind. To decide I like someone, so much I would miss them if I didn't see them for a week, when all I know about them is their name and what they look like, and the fact they're working for my tormentors, is crazy. I suppose what I find strange is that none of these people seem able to pick up on my vibes and what I'm really thinking. But then partly that's because they're all being brainwashed by the controllers. But it does make one feel a bit lonely at times. I think if you've closed yourself off, like most people do, like Jenny, then you're not going to be able to pick up on vibes, and you're pretty much reliant on superficial things to tell you about the people around you. Okay, so that's the end of the entry for 22nd June, Thursday. This is my journal entry from the 12th of April 2014. So it's a day after the last entry I read out in the last video for April 2014. The chapter in my book, Healing Yourself, I'm reading, is called Forgiveness and Clearing Your Karma. I don't usually hold grudges. My problem is knowing when to stop giving others second, third or fourth chances when they keep abusing my goodwill. Autistic people don't play the games other people play with each other. It is really annoying to me that instead of just coming out with what they want, people will lie and try to manipulate you. I was 17 before I realised people lie, deliberately, either to hurt others or to get something they want. I was often described as gullible. Some people still think I am. I'm not. I always find out the truth, because that's what I'm dedicated to. Most people don't seem to have a care about why we're here, what's really going on in the world, what happens when we die. I think because their concerns are mostly selfish, they think if they focus on just pleasing themselves, they will be happy. I suppose it makes sense if you believe we are all separate, individual beings. It doesn't work like that though. You have to find a way to flow with the universe if you want to find happiness. Only the universe can bring you that. Sadly, there are those who just enjoy being horrible because they think this makes them powerful. My mother liked to hold grudges. She was into power, and the only way to have power over people is to get them to give it away to you. And you bribe them into giving away their power by making them believe you will love them if they do certain things, but that you will take away that love if they don't. Of course, this isn't love. This isn't the unconditional love of the Creator that we all crave and which we have separated ourselves from. My mother fell out with her mother not long after she married, about 5 years I think, and she never spoke to her again, so I don't have any memories of this grandmother. For a while, when we were children, she would send us cards at Christmas and birthdays, and at Easter we would get Easter eggs. My mother never let us have the cards or the money that was in them, but we got the Easter eggs. It wasn't just her mother she cut her ties with, but her entire family. Her own mother died of breast cancer, but she wouldn't make up with her, even while she was on her deathbed, and she wouldn't go to the funeral. After she herself had died from the same disease, my dad got in touch with her brother. Her other brother had also died, but I'm not sure how. I met this brother, the one still living, and it was strange. He looked like my mother, but he was a totally different personality. Very quiet and unassuming. He had a wife and a son. Speaking to his wife, she said they'd been together for a long time, but he wouldn't leave his mother. He said she needed him. Actually, from the things my other grandmother, my dad's mother, told me about this woman, she was very much like my mother, domineering, bossy, controlling. My mother loved to tell us stories about how terrible her father was, but according to my nan, he was a very quiet man, much like her brother. I think my mother presented this false picture of her family, because she still thought she had us convinced that it was not she who was the narcissist, but us, that we made her do horrible things because we were so naughty and bad. I remember my mum and my dad having a conversation once, the only conversation like it I can ever remember. She already had cancer by this time, and she was reading a lot about New Age topics and self-development. She must have been talking about one of these books to my dad, and he, very gently, suggested that sometimes she could be a little bossy. I can't remember his exact words, but I remember thinking what a huge understatement it was. But my mother wouldn't even accept this much, that she enjoyed telling people what to do, and clearly this is what she spent nearly every minute of her life doing. At this point, I don't know whether she really believed it, her lies, her own lies that is, or if she still just wanted us to believe we were the ones at fault. But I have seen this in other people, how easily they deceive their own selves and refuse to face something in their own behaviour. The split with her family occurred because she said her mother had told my dad's mother that she was having an affair with some guy she worked with at a pub. She actually told me this herself. I think she thought I would disbelieve it and join her in hating her mother, a person I couldn't even remember having met. I've often wondered about my sister Claire. She doesn't look like any of us, not even like my mother. I was talking to Claire one day, and she mentioned her suspicion one of us might have had a different father. She didn't say why she thought this, so I told her the reason for our mum's falling out with her mother. Claire laughed and said me and Liz looked too much like Dad for it to be true. For some reason she didn't realise that it was herself I was referring to, but I didn't say any more, just marvelled at how easily people can close their ears to things they don't want to hear. By saying all this, it probably sounds as if I still have issues with my family. But I don't hate my mother. I did as a child growing up. It was my dream that my parents would get divorced and my dad would take me to live with him. Or, failing that social services would come and take me into care. My mother used to tell us as kids that she was going to take us to Bernardo's, an orphanage, or sometimes it was the baby shop. She'd say she got us from the baby shop, but because we were such bad children she was going to take us back. This made Liz and Claire cry. Sometimes I'd wonder if it was a competition between them who could cry the loudest. I'd tell them not to, because it just made her say these things more often, because she liked making them cry. But they would never listen to me. I don't hate her now though. After she was diagnosed with cancer, I think having to face her own mortality made her look at some of the things she'd done and try to make amends, and we were actually friends towards the end. Although I never managed to talk about the past with her, we just ignored it and pretended it hadn't happened. I believe she did actually gain from this life, and that she had changed towards the end. I also learnt from the experience. I had a strong faith in authority figures, and it was a hard lesson to learn that just because someone was in a position of authority, it didn't necessarily mean they always had your best interests at heart. Whether these people were a parent, a teacher, a policeman, a judge, or a priest, they were still as corruptible as your average person. In fact, most people go into these jobs to enjoy the power it gives them. For a long time growing up, my only experience of relationships was of conflict and arguments and anger. And even if I daydreamed about having some other relationship, the daydreams always involved an argument of some kind. I simply couldn't conceive of relationships in any other way. I took arguments as a given in relationship, that this is what happens when people love each other. It was the only way I could justify my parents' treatment of me. I often blamed myself as well when I was younger, till I realised I had a simple choice. Either I carried on blaming myself and thinking I could do better, be a better person for them, and in this way preserve the idea that my parents loved me, or I could accept that my parents didn't love me the way they should have, and that I hadn't been a bad child. In the end, of course, you have to choose. You have to choose yourself. It was a lesson in self-love. Then you have to learn to forgive those who did these things to you, and that took a lot longer. Understanding these things intellectually is very different from actually being able to experience a deep and profound love for yourself. Until you reach that place, it is hard to find forgiveness because you're still hurting inside. My brother Ed came back from university last night. I haven't seen him for 3 years. But Ed was always the one I got on best with. I can see something of myself in him. He's more like me than the rest of them. I can get on with him in a way I can't with the others, even though I know he's still part of the harassment. I'm hoping things will be easier at home now he's here. Things have been a bit tense lately. Okay. That was the 12th of April 2014. So, thanks for listening. Say hello, Ginger. Psst, 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 psst. You want to say hello? Ginger. Pretty cat Ginger. Say hello. Who's gorgeous?